I'm Emmanuel Sanders, and I just retired from a 12-year NFL career. As I transition, I feel that it's important to look back on history and learn about the pioneers of the game. It's an honor to tell a story of Jimmy Raye, a trailblazer who helped shape the culture for black quarterbacks and black coaches in the National Football League.
In one word, I'd describe Jimmy Raye as iconic.
Impactful.
Intelligent.
He's the first black quarterback from the South to win a national title.
Jimmy Raye is tough.
Jimmy Raye was a bad dude.
Could not find a better football mind. Jimmy Raye should have been a head coach so many times over, and I just call it like I see it.
He was why I learned what the word indelible meant. He explained, indelible means that they can never take it away from you and it's gonna be there forever.
When I heard about the story of Jimmy Raye, I was intrigued. It reminds me of a similar story of myself. I grew up in a small country town, Belleville, Texas. It's probably like 50 minutes outside of Houston. And I mean, those situations that I feel like, you know, as an African-American, I shouldn't have had to go through just because of the color of my skin. I was fortunate enough to be drafted by the Steelers and be drafted by an African-American head coach. And when I tell you that guy changed my life, he changed my life.
Man, that was gold. We screwed it up, but we converted that 3rd and 10 too. Let's get ready to rock and roll.
He was there for me. He understood the culture that I came from. He understood that I came from a impoverished situation, and immediately overnight I became practically a millionaire. I didn't know really what to do with that. He's been through those steps, so he knew how to talk to me in that aspect. He knew when I was struggling through that aspect. He knew the cultural differences that I was having with that aspect, and so, you know, when I see that it's not a lot of African-American coaches, but a majority of the players in the National Football League are African-American, it's kind of mind-boggling when you think about it. I think it's pretty cool that, you know, Jimmy Raye influenced Tony Dungy, and Tony Dungy hired Mike Tomlin with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And so I think this story right here comes full circle with me.
Fayetteville, North Carolina, small town about 60 miles south of Raleigh.
By all counts, Fayetteville was a segregated small town.
Growing up in North Carolina back in the 50s and 60s was very challenging, very demeaning. We were subject to the Jim Crow law.
We went to the movies in separate sections. Restaurant facilities, non-whites couldn't go in them, except, of course, to go to work, wash dishes, and do stuff like that.
In the southern part of America was turmoil, and that was basically the environment that I grew up in.
I'm not familiar with this building.
You are as familiar with it as I am.
You wanna walk up and take a seat?
No, I don't want to sit down here. No.
So where are we at right now?
This was a slave market. This place is where black people were brought to town on Saturday and sold. It was a symbol of white supremacy. It was a symbol of oppression of black people. My mom and my dad made sure that we understood the laws of Jim Crow and what this represented. I was made aware of that at a very early age. When I was a kid in the Woolworth store up the street there, I reached for the handle on the fountain, and my mom grabbed me by my shoulder and pulled me back because I was getting ready to turn on the white water fountain. Our indoctrination as young men in the South was the Emmett Till story. What happened to him when he left Chicago and went down to Mississippi to visit his relatives and supposedly made a comment or whistled at a white lady, and he was pulled out of bed at night and killed and tied to a cinder block a cement structure and dropped in the bottom of the river. And so all of the black boys during that time was made aware of that lineage. If we were walking down the street and there were two white women approaching us on the side of the street we were on, we knew to cross over, to not put ourselves in a situation and become an Emmett Till. This is the closest I've ever been, and I know none of my friends or none of my parents' friends have ever been this close to this place. And frankly, I don't understand why it's still here.
Living in North Carolina in the 50s and 60s was very difficult, but you had to have a village, and we were surrounded with a village.
You really lived in your own world. And your world just happened to include all people who looked like you.
So we're E. Smith. What does this school mean to you?
Well, E. Smith was everything. It was the beacon on the hill during the time of segregation. It was the only school for blacks. C. Smith was noted for great quarterbacks, guys that went on to be stars at HBCUs. It was a dream of mine to be a quarterback at E. Smith because you followed in the footsteps of legends.
Of greatness.
Yeah.
Any games come back to memory in terms of where you dominated?
The most fun for me was the East-West Shrine game. I scored touchdown pass. I threw two. I ran one. I ran a kickoff back for a touchdown. Before the final drive, when the game was in the balance, they put me in as a free safety and I intercepted a pass for a touchdown.
You was a bad boy then. You was a bad boy. Everything was flowing.
Yeah, and I had a day and I won the Most Valuable Player award. I was on top of the world.
Was that the moment that you knew, like, I really got it, right? Or were college scholarships already coming in at that time, or?
Yeah, they were coming in from historical black schools. No athlete out of E. Smith had gone to a white school or to an integrated college. My thought was that I was gonna go to an HBCU. What changed the trajectory of everything was the Most Valuable Player trophy was presented by Cal Stoll, and he was an assistant coach at Michigan State. And that's ignited and started my recruiting to Michigan State.
Back in the 60s, there were very few black players that you would see on TV. There was an unwritten quota of just having a half dozen or so. And a kid like Jimmy Raye would grow up planning to play at an HBCU.
Blacks was playing in the Big Ten, they was playing out west in California, but no one from my area had ever been recruited.
Duffy Daugherty was on the cover of Time magazine in 1956 after their Rose Bowl season. And he and Bud Wilkinson, the Oklahoma coach who had won national titles, put on what was called the Kodak Coaches Clinic. And then when Duffy Daugherty spoke at a clinic in Atlanta, he was upset that the black high school coaches weren't allowed to attend. He subsequently put on a clinic on his own for them. Here they already respected him from seeing him on TV and the opportunity he gave for black athletes. Bubba Smith's father was a famous high school coach during segregation in Texas, Willie Ray Smith. He wanted Duffy to take Bubba with him to Michigan State. It was because the black high school coaches understood Michigan State would give their players a chance.
He was slated to go to John C. Smith, the same school I ended up going to, which is a smaller environment than Michigan State for sure. Jimmy got into the atmosphere he wanted to be in. Greatest thing ever happened to him, in my opinion.
When I saw you guys in that lobby and I saw all that green, I said, man, like, they're proud of their school, you know what I mean? This is where you guys first came on y'all official visit?
Yeah, I came here. And that experience was different for me because you couldn't stay in a hotel down south. Cal Stoll, he told me to meet him downstairs at breakfast the next morning. I didn't see him, so I stayed outside. because where I came, you couldn't go into a restaurant. The hostess on the counters, I was standing out there looking in, and she came outside. I said, are you waiting for the coach or you recruit? I said, yeah. And she said, come on in, he'll be here. So I was sitting there thinking that any minute somebody was gonna say, you know you're not supposed to be in here. What are you doing sitting in here? He finally showed up, and I was relieved, you know, like, well, nothing happened. So I was looking at the menu. He said, most of the players that come here order the blueberry pancakes. And I said, okay, I'll go with that.
You didn't know what to be.
Yeah, no, I had never seen the menu before, no.
Wow.
So I went with the blueberry pancakes.
Were they good?
Yeah, they were good.
Duffy Daugherty's Michigan State Spartans, ranked #1 in the nation after defeating North Carolina State the previous week, take on always dangerous Penn State. No less than 5 Spartan All-America candidates, including number 26, co-captain Clinton Jones. The Spartan offense is marshaled by junior quarterback Jim Raye, who succeeds graduated Steve Juday at the position.
It was a phenomenon in the history of sports because it was the first time that you had such a diversified, integrated football team that had no issues racially, considering the times that we were playing together in the mid-'60s.
Regardless of where you come from, you fit in. Jimmy from Fayetteville, North Carolina. George Webster from Anderson, South Carolina. Bubba Smith from Beaumont, Texas. I came from Hawaii. Duffy Daugherty, the puzzle maker, puts guys in a certain position, be successful.
The mighty Spartans are tuned up for their Big Ten schedule and truly deserve top billing among the country's collegiate power.
And there was a lot of pushback. Michigan State was called the Grambling of the North. Duffy Daugherty received all kinds of mail complaining about it.
Not only were we fully integrated, it was the first time a major college had 2 black co-captains.
Spartan quarterback Jim Raye passes to Gene Washington for 28 yards and a first down near midfield.
Duffy didn't see color, he saw talent. He was going to play the best 11 players, and the best 11 players included a black quarterback.
Jimmy, I mean, he had the speed and he could throw the ball. But once you got to know him, you knew that he knew more about football than a lot of people did. He was more intellectual about the game than what you would think most quarterbacks at that time were.
Jimmy Raye lives up to his reputation as a running quarterback. Quarterback Jim Raye finds All-America candidate Gene Washington in the end zone. Touchdown, and the Spartans move ahead to 20-0.
Jimmy would just run and throw. He had that. He's a precursor of what you see now.
Remarkable acrobatic scramble. Touchdown!
He went wide open. Touchdown.
The spin, the sprint, and the score. What a game put together by Jalen Hurts.
Jimmy and I visited Miss Pauline Adams, the woman who Jimmy calls his angel. They have an uncommon bond that has lasted over 60 years. How did you guys meet?
Well, we met in the classroom, in my classroom. He was a serious student and was wonderful, and it was wonderful to have him.
She fed me on Sunday when the dorms were closed. She provided guidance about the university, and it was much needed because I was trying to acclimate. As I said earlier, in the South, black kids, black and teenagers and black young men had to avoid white women. And all of a sudden, I end up at Michigan State. I'm 18 or 19, and the person that is most responsible for my adjustment turned out to be a white lady, Mrs. Adams.
It was segregation, the civil rights movement was going on. How were the times around here? Was it good times around?
Chaotic. It was chaotic because there was the civil rights movement. There was a strong group of black students who were organized and active on campus, very active. And there was the anti-Vietnam War movement going on at the same time. So this was chaos, really.
The Vietnam War plus the civil rights movement and Michigan State and Coach Duffy Daugherty having an integrated football team at that time was the exception rather than the rule.
He got letters from people I don't know where in Michigan attacking him. And he was astounded at the viciousness of those letters that he got.
And so when we played Notre Dame in the game of the century, not only was it a football phenomenon that it's turned out to be, but also had social impact.
Notre Dame, Michigan State, the most anticipated, publicized, and discussed collegiate football game of the decade, has finally arrived.
It was the game of the century. And that game was the first live telecast in the state of Hawaii.
The first time they had an NCAA football game that was shown around the world. In Vietnam, it was shown in Germany and Europe.
Michigan State score on the nation's #1 team.
More people watched that game than saw the Super Bowl.
When you look at both squads, we had African Americans, Mexicans on our side.
We had 7 black starters on defense and totally a minority backfield. And Notre Dame had only 1 black player on their whole team, and that was Alan Page. It didn't hit me that I was the only black kid playing quarterback for a Division I school. I was just trying to play as good as I could play and enjoy myself.
Jimmy Raye turns on his tremendous speed for 30 yards. Jimmy Raye is a constant aerial threat, having completed better than 50% of his passes this year. Michigan State jumps out to a 10-0 lead, much to the dismay of our Persiguians.
It was a total paradigm shift. The black players from the South with no interracial relationships. White players in the North and from the South that had no interracial relationships, and come together as young men to play a sport that they loved. We came together as a band of brothers.
The Irish elect to go for the field goal. Joe Azara's 13-yard attempt is good. Collegiate football game of the decade ends in a 10-10 tie.
10-10 tie. We wouldn't be talking about it as the game of the century if we had beat them or if they had beaten us.
And over the years, I've had any number of people come up to me and say where they were the day that game was being played.
Michigan State was a powerhouse in the 60s, winning back-to-back national championships in 1965 and 1966. During those times, how was the campus like? And even Miss Pauline was telling me about the Vietnam War, and it seems like it was just around that time, even though y'all were coming together as a football team, it seems like the country was kind of divided at the same time. Did you guys feel that around the campus, or?
You know, some of the outside noise, whether it be Vietnam or whether it be what was going on around the nation, may have even tightened us up. I mean, we were a team. What went on the field, in the locker room, belonged to us. Mm-hmm. And I think we leaned on each other to get ourselves through some of those tough times.
The 65 and 66 team, what would you guys want the legacy to be remembered? Obviously, champions, right? A bond of brothers that came together. And...
Well, I think obviously it was the diversity and the inclusion. Black players, white players, Samoan players, all band together for a common cause. I think those two teams changed the narrative of college football because it proved that for the people in the South, that an integrated, all-inclusive team could work together and win together. And I think that's the lasting legacy of the 65, 66 national championship teams, is that they showed the country that blacks and whites could play together and that blacks could play quarterback.
It's really big then because everyone black was pulling for our team.
You guys showed, even though y'all probably didn't even understand at the time how big it was, or did you guys?
No, we were
not really how big it was. Now we look back on it, we see how big it was.
Yeah,
but we didn't think it was that big. I mean, as big as it is now.
Yeah.
Because it opened up the eyes to the South, so.
That right there, was the factor for me to say, man, like, these guys really shifted the culture of America.
It was the greatest experience of my life, coming from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, coming to Michigan State, meeting the finest gentlemen one could ever meet, but always retain my own identity. And good time had by all.
Emmanuel Sanders, welcome to Tampa. How you doing?
Good, I'm good. You doing all right?
Doing well, doing well. Great to see you. Come on in, man.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me into your home.
My fascination with football started with watching Jimmy Raye and Clint Jones and George Webster and Bubba Smith and all these guys at Michigan State. I grew up in Michigan. My dad, at that time, went to Michigan State to work on his PhD. So I'm a little kid now, like 8 years old, living in the married housing on Michigan State campus. My dad's taking me to games, $1 to sit in the end zone. So I'm going with my dad for $1 to go watch, and these guys are unbelievable. Jimmy Raye, number 16, he's the quarterback, so I go home and I'm Jimmy Raye in the backyard throwing balls, and that's how I grew up. I'm like, wow, this is what football is all about. And Jimmy Raye was the ringleader. He was the quarterback.
1 year after Jimmy Raye and Michigan State showed the world what an integrated team could accomplish, the SEC welcomed its first black player, Nate Northington, at the University of Kentucky. The tides began to turn in college football, but the NFL was a new frontier for Jimmy Raye, with racist perceptions about what black quarterbacks could do.
Initially, the word was that we wasn't smart enough. You know, we wasn't leaders. And they were concerned about, our character.
I was drafted by the Los Angeles Rams, and immediately when they made the phone call, George Allen was the coach. And he said to me that they thought I would make a terrific free safety.
He was a quarterback all the time. They switched him over to defensive back. Once again, it goes back to starting a guy that's non-color.
I was traded from the Los Angeles Rams to the Philadelphia Eagles. I was starting as a corner in the Dallas Cowboy game. I had a compound fracture to my right arm. It was when the bone came through the skin. And so I ended up having to give up on my dream of playing in the NFL.
He started doing another avenue of, okay, how could I make this thing work?
I came back to East Lansing to finish school.
He was preparing to take the law school exams, and Duffy had him do some part-time coaching in 1971. And in 1972, he made him a full-time coach on his staff. And so in 1972, you have Jimmy Raye and Sherman Lewis, two black coaches on a staff at a time most schools were just getting around to hiring their first black coach. Both Jimmy Raye and Sherman Lewis eventually went on to the NFL.
I broke into the 49ers in 1977. And when I broke into the league, I was one of only 4 black coaches. And in 1983, John Robinson at the Los Angeles Rams appointed me offensive coordinator.
That was special for us. He's calling the plays, he's in charge, he's running the offense. That was unheard of at the time.
I can't say that I liked him at first. I mean, I thought that he was just a mean person. I said, man, this man mean as hell. Just always, yelling and screaming and, do this, do that. God dang it, damn it, do what I tell you to do. Eric, what was your route? I said, I had the check down route. He said, why don't you run the check down route? I said, well, he said, see, that's what I'm trying to tell you, son. Run what you're told to run. He said, I'm trying to help you. Don't get your big, tall ass knocked out. Oh, I was pissed off. So, after we broke down, he said, Eric, come in, let me talk to you for a minute. I said, yeah, man. I said, what's up, man? He said, let me tell you something, son. He said, I'm not trying to hurt you. He said, I'm trying to help you. He said, Eric, you could be a great player in this league. He said, I don't want to see you get hurt. And I can't lie. After that, the way he talked to me at that point, I guess I looked at him way different.
Jimmy Raye's coaching career spanned over 5 decades, from 1977 until 2013. He coached 10 different teams and spent 13 years as an offensive coordinator. He was one of the first black offensive coordinators in the league and gained success with multiple top 10 offenses that highlighted devastating running games and innovative aerial attacks. He coached Hall of Famers Marcus Allen, Tony Gonzalez, Earl Campbell, Steve Young, and Eric Dickerson, to name a few.
1984, he and I coached against each other. He's offensive coordinator for the Rams. I'm the defensive coordinator for the Steelers. We play them. It's the first time ever. Two guys have kind of matched up, matching wits. He's calling the offensive plays. I'm calling the defensive plays, and we're going against each other. But Jimmy kind of, he led the path in so many ways. And so when I became a head coach, that was important to me. I've got to do the same thing. So I was on the lookout for young, aggressive, smart African-American coaches because I wanted them to get the same opportunity I had. So to be able to hire Herm Edwards and Lovie Smith and Mike Tomlin and Leslie Frazier, it was special.
Jimmy Raye and you. When I think of you two guys, it's just black excellence. You being the first African-American head coach to win a Super Bowl, how was that feeling in terms of everything that you have been
pretty
through?
Special. If you know, you could put yourself in my shoes growing up, not seeing those role models in football and the coaching side of it, and all of a sudden being there and saying, we've got the best team in football, we're on the top of the mountain, and it was special.
The celebration has begun. Down on the field, Tony Dungy becomes the first ever African-American head coach to win an NFL championship.
After the 2006 Super Bowl, there was a lot of optimism that Coach Dungy's success will lead to more minority hirings. There's a perception of change in the NFL, but in reality, at the end of the 2022 season, there are only 3 black coaches in the league. Most black coaches applying for head coaching positions are facing the same hurdles that Jimmy Raye faced more than 40 years ago. Former Rams assistant Jimmy Raye, offensive coordinator for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, interviewed for the vacant job as head coach of the New Orleans Saints. If hired, Raye will become the first black head coach in NFL history.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Wow, wow, wow.
But unfortunately, I didn't get it. Jim Morrow got the job.
Jim Morrow.
Yeah, but I did interview for several more NFL jobs that didn't come about.
Jimmy Raye, what we like to say, was born too soon twice. He's born too soon as a quarterback, but also as a coach.
Over the period of years that I was involved in the NFL and interviewing for head coaching positions, the teams that were interviewing for the positions and hiring black head coaches was disingenuous.
When he has all the accolades and all the background, the experience, and for him to be, looked over, it was rough.
He got robbed. He should have been a head coach. You guys probably wouldn't want to talk to me if it wasn't for him. He believed in me. He saw something in me that maybe I didn't see in myself too. After that second year in the league, things got bad for me, and for him to believe in me and to be like, okay, we're going to feature you in this offense, to have that done to you as such a young player, that sets the tone for the rest of your career, and it certainly did for me.
It is what it is. No matter how brilliant you are as a coach, how great you are, as long as you're wearing this, it's different. I really believe that the only way it's going to change is that you got to have multiple black owners, and I don't know if it'll ever happen. And there's black people out there that could own a football team that has the money, but will they ever get the opportunity?
It's really disappointing to see the kind of roller coaster ride that we've been on with minority hiring and coaching. You'd like to get to the point where it wouldn't be a topic anymore.
They've come out with the Rooney rules. They've come out with ways to try to make it better, but it's still not where it should be.
The Rooney rule was so simple because he felt everybody would do it the right way. If you at least go in with an open mind and you interview people, you're going to make the right decisions.
Based on character.
On character and on your blueprint. Guys will get jobs because they'll get opportunities. But the way it's happened in reality is many owners say, well, let me just interview a minority candidate because that's what I have to do. I might want an offensive guy, but I'll interview this defensive line coach just because that'll satisfy the rule. And Dan never thought people would do that.
There has been measures of success and upward mobility, but not enough to sustain the league over the long haul. I think if the owners don't, in some form, turn toward understanding that diversity is good for business and hiring blacks in management and head coaching positions, I think the league is doomed to the reality of failure.
Coaching 36 consecutive years in the league is a tall task, accomplished by a great man. But you know what they say, beside every great man is a great woman.
Edwin, his wife, oh my God. Man, I don't know if I could do that. Give me a second.
It's not easy being a wife of a football coach. It's, you should get a Purple Heart. That's a toughie.
Once you enter the arena of professional athletics, your partner or your significant other is paramount. And Edwina Farmer-Raye, my wife, was my biggest supporter and my greatest champion. We were together since high school. She knew me as a person, she knew me as a player, she knew me as a coach. She was the mother of my two children, Robin Michelle and Jimmy III.
They're a match that was made in high school.
Edwina was like that star in the sky that you think you can never touch, but those two were inseparable. Everywhere you see Jimmy, Edwina was there, steady backing him and steady pushing him to do better. In her heart, she was gonna make Jimmy great, even though, he didn't see it, but she saw it.
Jimmy just wanted to draw everybody into his little circle. And Edwina was the one that kind of kept an eye on the dogs. She could figure out who people were, what their intentions were, if they were harmful to Jimmy, if they were an asset to Jimmy. Edwina's a tough nut. And she was good for Jimmy, no question.
The day that she passed, Jimmy called me, and we both cried over the phone.
She was a strong individual, and without her, there was no way I would have accomplished 36 years in the NFL. Without that partnership and without that sameness and likeness that we had together. And I love her dearly, miss her every day. And she was very important to me. I entered the NFL in the 70s when diversity wasn't what it is now, but we were able to endure, and I'm very proud of the players that I coached. The reason I'm standing here, obviously, is I had a lot of great players, a lot of good players, many of whom are in the Hall of Fame, and I'm very appreciative and honored and thankful for that.
Jimmy Raye was nominated for the Pro Football Hall of Fame's inaugural Award of Excellence, but his legacy goes deeper than trophies and rings. To this day, he is a staple of the Fayetteville community with the annual Jimmy Raye Youth Foundation. He's touched the lives of thousands of players that he coached throughout the years. Jimmy served as the president of the NFL Coaches Association, and he's currently senior advisor to Troy Vincent, the NFL's executive vice president of football operations. He has a loving family, and his son, Jimmy Raye III, is an NFL executive. He changed the game for black quarterbacks and for black coaches. He left his mark on the world, and his name will forever be written in indelible ink in the halls of history.